decision on me.
Welcome to Comics League Dark. I'm Jared, and today we are discussing the continued downfall of Warner Brothers, and then we'll do a little Q&A afterwards. It's just me tonight. Hopefully the other guys will arrive momentarily as we discuss other topics. I'll resend the link to the Comics League chat. But in the meantime, how are you people doing? You guys having a good night? So let's get started. So again, we're talking about, our primary topic is that WBD, with their earnings report, they estimated. So I'm going to read you a passage from Forbes, and then we can really talk about what this means. So during their second quarter earnings report on August 7th, Warner Brothers Discovery announced an $11.2 billion, including a $9.1 billion write-down for their linear cable TV networks. Besides the struggling linear cable networks, WBD cited the potential of losing the NBA as another reason. The WBD also reported a $2.1 billion of pre-tax acquisition. The point is, there's a lot of stuff. The point is, this is the thing that's really interesting about this. This is one of the reasons why I don't have a lot of faith in really anything coming out of WB. It's not just DC, because this company is imploding monetarily. And I'm sorry if you're saying that, if you're eventually that much money. Yeah. Okay. M0, it's not. I want to be very clear on the amount of money I'm talking about here. $9 billion. Billion with a B. $9 billion. That's what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. $9 billion. Yeah. And then TJ said actually it's 11 billion. But the point is, 9 billion. Right down. I'm just answering this tweet real quick. But yeah, it's imagine that. But even if it's like 11 billion, I mean, the other thing, where all the money go? Waste. That's the answer, Tevye. It's just waste. That's it. It is just waste. Waste. Writing off, getting rid of projects. And the thing is like, that's how they even still running. I have no idea right now. M0. Likely what'll happen is, again, and here's the sad part. No one wants to buy them because reportedly Comcast doesn't want to buy WB. So it's likely going to happen is that the company will split into two separate companies. Again, it's not officially dead yet. I wouldn't say officially dead yet. I want to be clear on this. I'm just saying, with all the, let me put it this way. He could have the best universe, which, by the way, a lot of his stuff looks good. It's just WB is probably not going to be able to support it. And it's not necessarily all James Gunn's fault. It's primarily the fault of the idiocracy that are leading WB at this point, because I'm like, wait a second, you made all these bad business choices that are going to lead to these monetary issues. What do you think is going to happen at this point? It's astounding. Because ever since I started doing YouTube, how are they still a company at this point? Because it sounds super messed up and going bankrupt, literally. Not necessarily going bankrupt. I think what a write-down means is that they have to like decrease the value of their company. So they lose $9 billion in value. Likely what'll happen if the company is not split up, because I've heard this idea floated, they're going to replace David Zaslav with someone else as the head of WB, because currently his business decisions from the get-go practically have been like the biggest, like, what the hell is this? Like, for one thing, going all in on James Gunn, but it's not just that. Pulling Batgirl when it was literally almost done. pushing out the Flash and touting it as like the best DC movie ever, cutting off the universe like that, and not finishing the story before you start another one. Again, DC is not the only reason why WB is in this position. It's a reason that could have helped. Tevye says this reminds me of what happened to Marvel Comics a long time ago when they went bankrupt. Yeah, so Marvel Comics went bankrupt a little while ago. Tevye is right, and then they had to sell off the movie rights to different companies. This is why the article came out, like, I think it was like yesterday or the day before. I talked about it with Taladia, where they're looking to license and sell off their gaming because of the fact that they need the money coming in. Yeah, that Flash, it wasn't a failure from the very start of production, Tevye. I just want to be clear on that. But my point bringing that up is that it's just been bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And even from a PR standpoint, they're making bad decisions because it's like they keep making choices that they know the fans are going to hate. Like saying after Suicide Squad killed the Justice League collapse, they're like, we're going to do more live service games. I'm like, hey, dude, you realize that the game that made you the most money, that was the highest selling game of the year, was a non-live service game. So I'm not a business major. I was just a political science major. But I'm fairly certain that if you see something that the audience wants, you look and see, how can I replicate this? Which is pretty much what I do on YouTube all the time. What you guys want to see, what you guys respond to, I look, how do I replicate that again? If a particular episode of UTC does really well, I look, so what did I do from an editing perspective? What did I do from a topic perspective that made that topic get more traction? But WB is like doing the complete opposite. They're like, okay, so what are we doing that works? Oh, okay, we're going to do the complete opposite of that. And I'm like, how do you run a company like that? I'm just flabbergasted at this point. How do you run a company when it's essentially you're doing the opposite of what makes you money at this point, and then acting like, oh, we're going to turn around, we're going to make money. And Tevye, you'll love this. Then you essentially, again, put all of your baskets in one area instead of investing in other perspectives on DC. Not just Snyder, Superman and frickin' Lois. That was a popular show. People liked it. And you went, no, we're not going to do that. So we're going to go all in on the Superman thing. And again, not a ding against James Gunn. It's the ding against the executives. Because I get the feeling that if they had said, we're going to finish all these different stories together organically and not like haphazardly cancel them, I think more DC fans would have shown up for all these movies because they're like, we don't have to choose. When you make your audience choose, when you have the capacity to give options, you have to give people options. When you throw them in there, when you essentially pigeonhole them into one area, guess what that's going to do? If I don't say most of your audience doesn't want just that one area, they want other perspectives. And if you're not going to give those other perspectives, guess what the audience is not going to do? They're not going to support your product. It's that simple. That's kind of the way businesses are supposed to work. Apparently, I'm smarter than these people. But let's get back to more. Let's see what you find people are saying. Which this could explain why WB Games wants to go with different IPs to go with the other video game companies. Yeah, exactly. That's the point there. Nobody wants live service games. You want single player DC games or multiplayer games, but that don't have live service elements. Wait, I just realized something. What does it mean for DC Comics as a whole? This company went down real fast. What'll probably happen if they split off the company? What will happen is that portion will go to one company, and then the movies and games will go to a different portion. It's not like they're gonna like shut down the comics. That ain't happening. Sales aren't that bad. Indeed, in canceling Superman and Lois, my show, yeah, that is stupid. It's literally it was a success of a show, and you cancel it because you don't want competition for your main thing. I got news for you, dude. You just alienated your audience by forcing them in one direction. That's what you do. If you have something that's popular, because here's the thing, WB is essentially adapting the Disney Star Wars method of handling a product, where it's essentially like, it doesn't matter if the audience liked it or not. As long as you put like Superman or Disney Star Wars in front of something, they are going to show up for it. And I'm like, that's demonstrably not happened, particularly with this company. So what are you doing? This makes absolutely zero sense what WB is doing. And you know what? Ultimately, here's the sad part. This right here, this is probably not gonna affect Zaslav too adversely. He's too rich for that. It's gonna affect the average person at WB when they have to go to like layoffs. And honestly, it's sad. It's sad it got to this point due to faulty management. Tevia says, indeed. And plus, for some reason, they keep my adventure with Superman, but not Superman and Lois. Again, you give your audience options, and then they will show up for more of your stuff. Because what you get, if you make it so they don't have to choose, here's what happens. You get people that maybe are Snyder fans, but now that you've like respected them and completed the story, maybe they want to go try out James Gunn's universe. Or maybe if you organically complete Superman and Lois instead of canceling it, maybe those fans will want to go check it out. Like, hey, I really enjoyed how this Superman thing ended. I'm going to go check out how they do this. Yeah, that's the way it works. You provide options. A storefront property, let's say Blockbuster, does not sell only one movie, or did not sell only one movie. One. It doesn't sell only one movie because it knows that there are people that have many different tastes. If you cater to people that have different tastes, then you get a broader audience that are going to show up for your movies and products and such. So when you throw out the other stuff and to go all in on one, guess what that leads to? It leads to you having to underwrite your company by $9 billion. So I'm sorry, that is just pure stupidity at this point, because it's not like this wasn't obvious information. What it really was, it was pride. That's what it is. These guys come in, think they know everything, and then all of a sudden are like, oh my God, are like surprised. Why are we $9 billion like this? I'm like, I wonder why. Yeah, I can see the average employee working at this company getting fired, which is that. Yeah, exactly. It is sad. And honestly, it's disgusting. It is very disgusting. It is ridiculously sad that this happened. And you know what? I remember, and you can go back in my early streams, I originally had a lot of like hope for this because David Zaslav came in, fired the old idiot, the old management that had fumbled the DCEU so badly. And I thought, okay, you know what? He's going to do something different. He ended up being exactly like those people that he fired. I'm sorry. And this is why, ever since the DCU got announced, my opinion on it really has very little, if any, to do with James Gunn or like the quality of the project. It just has to do with my utter distrust for this company. Because honestly, I have no guarantees that they're going to be able to get to this point. I have no guarantees this universe will last past Superman at this point because of this. Because it's not like this company goes lower and then honestly starts recovering and goes up. No, it's been steady downhill practically since the beginning. So I'm sorry, this is utterly like stupid. And Tevia says, indeed. Like, for example, I will give the new 52 credit where it's due, and Rebirth is what at least gave us the options. Actually, well, Rebirth did not give options, Tevia. It took options away. New 52 gave options because what Dan DiDio said. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a short history lesson because I am the comics lord. So when they did the new 52, if you notice that there's like a lot of like minor characters getting books like OMAC, Red Hood and the Outlaws, you had Men at War, you had all these different projects that you wouldn't expect to get comic projects. Dan DiDio came out and said, the reason why we did that is because we wanted to give you a variety of different genres and options you wanted to read. If you want to read a military comic, you have that. If you wanted to read a sword and sorcery book, we have that. If you wanted to read a horror book, we have that for you. We want to give you options. Where when Rebirth showed up, they're like, take the new 52 and erase it. We're going right back to post-crisis, which didn't have a lot of options and was, quite frankly, tanking the company. And you know what? They wonder why DC Comics is in the got to write about now, because they went back to what made the new 52 necessary. And this is according to Dan DiDio. So there you go, guys. And Tevye, thank you for bringing that up, and I really appreciate that. And for some dumb reason, they keep. Yeah, I already mentioned that. So, what else do you guys think about the topics that I'm talking about today? Or is there any other topics that you guys would like me to touch on as well? Because just drop them in there, and I'll rapid fire through them. Let's do this. But ultimately, the problem with WBD, and I'm going to go to Q&A now. The problem with WBD is that they keep repeating the same mistakes, no matter if there's new leadership, and that will be the legacy of this once great company. Because here's the thing, it's not like WBD is struggling to get good IP. They have freaking DC and Harry Potter. Okay, it's not. Again, I want to emphasize this point. It's not like this company does not have recognizable IPs. Arguably, WB has some of the most, if not the most, recognizable IPs of all time, and they keep fumbling the ball. Ashton, what's up, brother? The comics wouldn't be in such an incoherent, convoluted mess if they actually ended things. That is true, and that goes straight for Marvel and DC as well. Yeah, and here's the thing with the new 52. I know people say that we would have been more accepting of the new 52 if post-crisis had been allowed to end. Here was the problem with that. DC had no choice. They had to do it quickly. Because what happened is AT&T came to them and said, your sales are so bad, either fix the sales now or we're shutting down your company. And then they would end up like licensing the characters to other like publishers. It wouldn't be like they wouldn't publish. We wouldn't not have Superman books anymore. It's just to be Superman by other companies and such. They also have Looney Tunes as well. That's a good point, Tevye. They have some of them. Arguably, they have the most recognizable IPs ever. They have freaking Superman, and they're struggling. So long as they keep doing this never-ending continuity, things will never change. And you know what? People always bash the repeated reboots that DC does. I think that's a great idea. Because guess what that does? You're constantly able to hop on a new, on the ground floor of stuff and don't have to worry about all this continuity. And then you can reference it. Yes, actually, there should be a reboot every like 10 to 15 years, or really every 5 years. Ultimately, I think is the sweet spot, because then you keep it, you're constantly keeping it fresh, and you have to make it different every time. You can't just say this is slightly different. Like now, Superman's not with Lois, but he's also doing something else. Those are the exact same. That's my point there. You have to make it different. Regular reboots are a good thing, because here is the problem. So let's say someone came up to me and said, Jared, I want to read Batman. Okay, so now I got to go. All right, so technically you can start in the Scott Snyder run, but that references like all the way to the very beginning of Detective 27 practically. So you have to read that. But then at the end of that, you go to the Tom King run, which you can skip that after issue 50, and then you jump over the James Tynion's run, and then skip this chunk of issues. So in other words, the minute you make it really complicated for a new comic book reader to hop in, they're not going to hop in. That's it. That's just the way it's going to work at this point. Well, and Tevye says, well, we do have the Ultimate Universe of DC. I'll see if they actually make that work, but but still, because to a degree, if those start competing, I wouldn't be surprised if the Absolute Universe starts outselling DC like dramatically. I could see them saying we're going to replace it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like, for example, with Spider-Man comics, I hate to say it, but maybe a reboot is necessary at this point. Yeah, because because at this point, comics have 70 to close to 100 years of continuity at this point. How do you expect a new reader to hop in on that? I know that's part of the fun of like comics and rediscovering stuff and rediscovering what stuff has been referenced. The problem is, most new readers are not going to see it that way. They're going to see it as, this is too daunting a challenge. I know, because guess what? I was that person. That's why I came in the new 52. For the most part, I didn't have to read anything. I didn't have to read anything prior. I could just read Superman, Wonder Woman, not necessarily Batman and Green Lantern, but you know what I'm saying. Aquaman, everything was starting from scratch, short of Aquaman and Green Lantern. And I could just start from there. And then once you have like a good like foothold and you understand basically who these characters are, then what I did is I went back and read classic back issues of like post-crisis stories like that. In other words, use these like avenues as ways in. And if people say, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, it is. You could literally go read it. This whole idea about how rebooting destroys people's childhoods is quite frankly, it's false. Because let me put it this way. I could go into any one of these books. Let me put it this way. Briefly, when the new 52 was decanonized by Rebirth, I didn't like moan or anything like that. I still read my new 52 books because guess what? I could still read it. I bought those books. That doesn't mean that WB is not going to walk into my room and take my comic books away. Hey, what's up, Hunter? Hunter says, Comics League, what if it just keeps James Gunn Universe as the main, Zack Snyder as the elsewhere when Zack is done? Yeah, that's what they could have done too, Hunter. That's a fantastic idea. That's what they could have done. Because again, going back to what I previously said, if they, because I saw one of the number one responses I saw on Twitter was if they had given a proper conclusion to the Snyderverse, and you can't say Zack didn't want to do it because he has expressed interest in doing it many times. If you had come to Zack and said, hey, listen, we'll give you an HBO Max miniseries of 2 seasons. Can you complete this and that? Sure. Go ahead. If you let him do that, guess what? If you because you would only really need ultimately, I think we would only get Justice League's Part 2 and 3. That's it. We could get the other ones as comics, but we'd probably only get Justice League. So that's like 2 movies. You could be done relatively soon, release them in 1 year on streaming, and then guess what? You're done with that universe. You've given it a proper conclusion. Then you have people that say, hey, you went to the trouble to actually give this a satisfying conclusion. I'm going to give this new universe a chance. You would have more people willing to give the James Gunn universe a chance. Obviously, I'm going to give it a shot because I like some of the stuff he's doing. 100%. I'm not saying I'm going to boycott it. I'm just saying I've seen people that have said I'm not going to give it a shot because they just haphazardly said, well, The Flash ends it, even though it really doesn't. Aquaman is the conclusion. It isn't. So what are you doing? Question. Speaking of universe that got a proper ending, should we count the Arrowverse as getting a proper ending with Crisis? Does that kind of count? I mean, the shows went on after Crisis, so maybe. I mean, I see what you're saying, Tevi, and that's a good point. I think it was like maybe that was the end of it as a universe, as like one like crossover thing. And then what they did is they just concluded each show. Well, some of the shows just got canceled, like Supergirl and Legends and such. A few of them after they ended on cliffhangers, which I was like really pissed off about. But ultimately, that's a really stupid thing. So, what other questions do you guys have? I'm here for a while, so why don't you guys ask me any burning questions that you guys had concerning comic books, DC, Marvel, TV, movies, WBD's utter stupidity, Super Wonder, why Clois does not work. Give me any questions that you guys would like to hear. To hear me give answers to why am I so awesome? How did I get into comic books? Anything you guys want to hear, I am here to respond. Let's see. What else while you guys type, let's see, what else can we talk about? I mean, ultimately, the thing is, with the Absolute Universe, I have no doubt they could start it. I have no doubt. I have doubts that they can continue it. What is, in your opinion, is the most underrated Superman story? Oh, geez, that is an excellent question, Atchison. Let me look at my shelf real quick. Honestly, underrated, or one that's not talked about enough, Superman Doomed by a bunch of different writers. As a matter of fact, hang on 1 second. I'll get the trade that I have, the hardcover. So Superman Doomed. So a little context here. So obviously new 52 Superman. And what's cool about it is that in the Superman Wonder Woman book, they hinted that Doomsday was coming in, the new 52 Doomsday. And obviously that indicated they're going to do some variation of the death of Superman. Now, what's cool about this, they did instead of copy and pasting, it's doomed. There you go, Atchison. There you go. Right there. Great minds think alike, brother. So the thing about the storyline is that they could have just copy and pasted death of Superman. But you know what they did? Oh, by the way, I think Greg Pak was the regular Superman writer at some point. But so you know what they did? They made it so Doomsday's a virus that turns you into a Doomsday monster, and Superman was turning into Doomsday to the point where Wonder Woman almost killed Superman, because it was essentially the idea that, like, with Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship, they had an understanding that the world came first, and that no matter what, they would have to put the world over their relationship. So here's the cool thing. So Doomsday has like a death field where people around him will be like poisoned and die and such. So there was this point where Wonder Woman realized that if he walked into this, he did a few issues of Action Comics in the Doom storyline. Okay. And I remember I really enjoyed his writing. So I'm with you right there. So there was a line. So yeah, it looks like it, Dave. I'm running solo, so we're just doing a little hangout Q&A stream and talk about WBD having to underwrite $9.1 billion. So in Doomed, there was a storyline. There was a moment where Wonder Woman has her sword up, because if Superman walks into he also wrote some parts of Doom. But the thing is, so Wonder Woman was like, "You made me promise, Clark. If we ever got to this point, I'd do what I had to do. You made me promise." And here, right there, she has the sword at his head, like she is going to cut his head off and kill him, because if he walked into that town, everyone was going to die. Luckily, that he didn't have to do that, and obviously Superman didn't die. And then it turned into a Super Doomed versus Brainiac storyline, and it was so glorious. Yeah. So let me see what Hunter says here. Hunter says, if we get a new Superman game based off James Gunn's Superman from based off Superman game from 2009 as an open world. Oh, you mean Superman Returns? Yes, I've been telling people that forever. Say what you want about the overall gameplay. They did the health in that game super well, because instead of Superman being like invulnerable, you made it so you had to save the city. The city was your health. That is an excellent way to handle Superman's invulnerability. What other questions do you guys have? Go ahead and drop whatever questions that you guys would like for me to answer. It can be about anything comics related. It doesn't have to be like on WBD. Superman 2 is 100%. Atchison, this is what they should have done instead of that stupid Death of Superman movie in the Camu. Because guess what? This takes the gist of that storyline and does it with literal new 52 characters. You literally had a layup where you could have done basically that storyline, but with the new 52 Superman. But no, you had to shoehorn in post-crisis. Tevia says, question, speaking of storylines, I'm wondering, what's your favorite DC YOU storyline that took place after Convergence? Oh, okay. I didn't read Convergence, so I don't have a favorite Convergence tie-in. That's a good question, Tevia. That's a really good question. I'm going to have to go with, you know what's kind of funny? I actually have not really read anything from DC YOU or Convergence or anything like that. Unless Darkseid War counts, but I don't think it does. But yeah, I know, because I avoided that era like the plague because I heard it was bad. So I was just like, no, I'm not dealing with that anymore. No. But that's a good question, Tevia. I really appreciate that one. Not to mention the first DC animated movie was essentially the actual adaptation of the Death of Superman. So, and here's the problem, David. Atchison actually brought this up on an earlier comment a long time ago, where the DC AMU went wrong. They literally is when they started taking post-crisis storylines and forcing them on new 52 characters, because the characters are wholly different. You can't just copy and paste it. So you literally had that element, the storyline that was basically that, but new 52. In a universe, and you had an animated universe based on the new 52, and you didn't do it. You forced it post-crisis. Look what happened. This is why I liked the Tomorrowverse more, because even though it was shorter, it at least stayed consistent with the tone. You know, it's funny. We didn't get Future's an animated movie because as bad as that story was, they could have made the story something animated. It could have been actually a pretty good animated series, as a matter of fact, because of how monsterly long that freaking thing is. Yeah, putting in post-crisis on the yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And I don't necessarily blame the creators because, according to what Sam told me, WBD forced them to do a lot of those storylines like Death of Superman because they essentially say, hey, this storyline's really popular. Do a movie on that. So it's not necessarily like they are that like they were like they essentially chose it, but the writing of those movies was horrible. You could have still done Death, but done it with Doomed. DCU version of Hush was awful. Yeah. It's the Snyder called it's the failed James Gunn movie and they want him to go back tomorrow. What is Dexter? But okay, first off, that's not what the Snyder called. That's what the minority of people in the Snyder fandom want. So I'm just gonna say that right there. Even though we did Death of Superman before a long time ago. Yeah, I know. That's the other thing. You literally did the storyline. And it didn't turn out well for you in terms of ratings from what I remember. And then when you look at that, and I was talking to Robert about this on UTC today, it's like when you look at like the DC AMU, relatively it was doing pretty well. Then as soon as we got to Death of Superman, it like cratered. It cratered like Superman's ship in frickin' Flashpoint. And I wonder why. Because you take different characterizations and tones and force them into storylines that are wholly incompatible. Arguably, the only good like post Death of Superman DC AMU movie that they did was Apocalypse War, which was the conclusion. I would have loved that. Would have been dope. Forever Evil as a movie. Oh my gosh. By the way, I want to show off a little something. So I have the Forever Evil trade because obviously being a fan of the new 52 Justice League, I have all the trades for it. But I got something very special. So a couple of years ago, I just got to move my chess pieces out of the way. I went to Florida SuperCon. This was like, I think this was before I even had the channel. I just had these comics that I enjoyed. Or like the channel was really young. I got the trade signed by David Finch, the artist, for the actual story of Forever Evil. So there you go. Actually, speaking of the DCAMU, that reminds me, if they did a new 52 storylines, what storylines would you have adapted in the universe? They did Court of Owls. I can't say that. Superman freaking Wonder Woman power couple would have been freaking nice. Because guess who was a couple in the Dicambu? Superman and Wonder Woman. You literally could have done that. And it was a relatively simple story to do. You could have had Wonder Woman become the goddess of war like they did in that. I know some people would not have liked that, but still, I think you could have done something pretty dope. You also had, let's see, what other new 52 stories could work? Superman Unchained, you could have done. You could have done Darkseid War definitely as a Justice League movie. Because for me, as much, well, yeah, I know your history in the new 52. I personally would like to see Trinity War. Trinity War could have been pretty dope. I would have loved that. You could have even done Batman and well, you did Batman. You did the Robin thing. But even with that, the introduction of Damian Wayne was literally the Grant Morrison post-crisis thing. So I'm like, stop it. I would have liked to have seen actual origin movies for each of those. Like you see Superman, but he's in like the t-shirt and jeans. That would have been really cool. You could have also done Earth 2. That's something that they could have done that would have been really cool. Earth 2. The first storyline for Wonder Woman would have been pretty cool. Yep. Don't forget Wonder Woman and Lord Batman. No. That was a new 52 Hunter. And that was a bad idea. That was like ridiculously bad. There's a reason why I don't cover those Batman Beyond comics because they freaking suck. It was kind of funny, Atchison. The Shazam new 52 run is basically what the first Shazam live action movie was based on. It's pretty much that. You could have also done, how about a Deathstroke movie? You had Slade in there. You could have done the arc where, like, he gets the Godkiller sword, goes to Themyscira, and fights Wonder Woman. That's a hell of a story right there. You could have also done any of the Suicide Squad stories. You could have done Deathstroke. You could have done Nightwing. There's any number of new 52 storylines you could have done. You just had to care enough. Yeah, Deathstroke movie would be like, and what's up, Cameron? By the way, they did kind of make a Deathstroke animated movie called, I think it's called like Knights and Dragons or something like that, which is awesome, by the way. Check that out. Yeah, Batman and Robin. That would have been a good one. That would have been a fantastic one. You could have done any of the Green Lantern one. How about a Green Lantern movie that's actually a Red Lantern? Atchison, you beat me to the punch. Oh my gosh, I forgot there was a series. And it's getting an omnibus. Red Lantern. Oh my gosh, that would have been so freaking cool. Like, wow. Remember when Nightwing was rumored to happen? Yeah, exactly. Remember that. And I've got a buddy in the chat, so let's do this. Hello, sir.
Flame on! How's everybody doing tonight?
So JJheat, actually, Tevi asked a fantastic question. So for the Decamo, since it was pretty much, or at least for the first half of it, based on the new 52, what storylines from that era of DC could have made a pretty cool one?
I mean, the good ones, Court of Owls. Okay, Court of Owls. I'm just gonna say it. Court of Owls could have been a trilogy in of itself, but if you really wanted to streamline Grant Morrison's work, you really only need Batman Incorporated. That's really all you needed. And
and that would have actually been a pretty dope movie. Yeah, anything but, by the way, JJheat, did you see that DC is making an omnibus of the Red Lantern series from the new 52? Yes.
It's a good series.
Charles Soule, baby. Charles Soule.
It's a good, hey, credit where it's due. It's a good series. Granted, it's not earlier work. It's no Jeff Johns. It's no Jeff Johns and EMS, but it's a pretty decent run.
EVS.
Oh, EVS guy. Okay.
But it's not meant to be. It's its own thing, which I'm like, yes. And Animal Man by Swamp Thing could have done the Green Lantern Rise of the Third Army or Wrath of the First Land. Yeah, any of those.
I mean, the Green Lantern IP did take a hit after Ryan Reynolds' 2011, so there was just no confidence in it.
That's true, but JJheat, apparently they had confidence in the death of Superman because they adapted into animation twice. The second time, actually, both times to disaster. I'm going to say both times there.
Okay, we'll say this. I don't know if this was directly tied to the actual estate of the actual creators of Superman, so correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. But Superman Doomsday or Superman 07 was basically tied to a legal dispute over the copyright over a legal issue where Superboy Connor Kent couldn't be used. So they wrote around it by creating essentially a direct clone of Clark Kent for the third act. Which, I mean, yeah. But me personally, I just would have delayed the film until after the legal stuff was resolved. That way you could make a full adaptation. Mm-hmm. But that's all I'm going to say on that. But as for the Camu version, it's a straight adaptation outside the roster change, which really is a benefit because
outside. Except here's the thing: this is the Justice League that could actually do something against Doomsday. So when they get their asses kicked, I'm like, no. I'm sorry. Wonder Woman and Green Lantern could throw Doomsday into the sun.
Now, the JLA definitely got curb stomped against Doomsday. No one's refuting that. Mm-hmm. But a direct or typical standard roster of the Justice League would at least be able to hold their own.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, Tomasi, it kind of makes sense that this movie that also shoehorned in a stupid romance was written by Tomasi. But so you're telling, if you wanted this Justice League, if you wanted the Justice League to get their asses kicked, just do the JLI. And I know you can't do that because that's not the league in this. Do it as a separate movie. And then when you get to Reign, is by Robert, who is a huge Lois fan, was even like, he lost like respect for those movies when I told him, yeah, the reason why they shoehorned in the Lois stuff is because they said Lois plays a massive part in the death of Superman. And even he was
in
like,
Reign, she does.
In Reign, she plays a role. But even Robert, who's like a big Lois fan, is like, no.
In Reign, she played a role. Now, yet you need the emotional buildup, the payoff, and the setup for Lois's arc going into Reign. And say what you will about the whole Super Wonder stuff. I'm not going to go into that, even though that's your show, Jared. That's your bread and butter. I'm not going to go into that. But even if we were factor that, all you needed was either a Wonder Woman movie or a Superman and Wonder Woman movie to actually establish a breakup. Hell, even the tie-in comics, the ones between Death and Reign for the DeCamus version.
Oh, you mean the what? Here's the stupid part about those effing tie-in comics. They used the actual comics' new 52 character design, so people think that's actually canon to the new 52.
I mean, the new 52 was the template for the DeCamus. I mean,
no, but look at the Wonder Woman design. It's not even the movie Wonder Woman. Yes, he wanted a breakup movie. Oh, and by the way, apparently, did you know that Jim Craig wrote so it was wrote Reign of Superman. So that whole line of Lois saying, yeah, what Clark and I had was great, but you're his true love, Lois. Guess what?
It was tacked on.
Unfortunately, yeah. I don't necessarily blame Craig. I can blame Tomasi because he has more of a reputation of being petty towards Super Wonder fans. But still, yeah, Tucker wanted the breakup movie. That's absolutely right.
I mean, I will give you and Britt this, and I'll be sure to, if you ever invite me back on a Super Wonder episode, by all means. But I will give y'all this. The most y'all got was 2 4-way lines, one in Death and the other with Reign. The most you got
either way was like still a kick in the nuts because they're like, no, this is not valid. This is not valid. So I'm like, screw you. I'm like, stop telling, because again, to Britt's point, that was Tucker saying, no, you should like Lois. And I'm like, no, you don't get to. Here's the way a business works. JJheat, we both have master's degrees, so I would imagine we're both pretty smart guys, correct?
I would say so.
Now, JJheat, in our limited experience of like running YouTube channels, let's say that. Let's say this. Do we get to tell the audience what they should want?
No, that's a stand. Even if you don't have a business degree, which admittedly I do not. I'm social work.
I don't either. I'm a political science guy. But even I know you don't get to tell the audience what they should want. You find out what they want and you provide it. That's the way this works.
Or at the very least, provide a similar product or alternative at the very least.
It's freaking, I'm like, what the hell is this? And then you have WB being in a $9.1 billion write-down. I'm like, yeah, this is why, because you guys are not being run by people that know how to run a business. This is obvious. By the way, Tevia asked, question, speaking of me, I'm wondering, why didn't we get a Brainiac movie? Could they? See, here's the thing, though. If they did Doomed, they could have split Doomed into 2 halves, done the Super Doom part in the first half, and then done the Brainiac part in the second half. I
mean, Brainiac, out of all of, Brainiac has the strongest IP out of all of Superman's villains, with General Zod as a very close second. But even if we weren't factoring that, Brainiac's been adapted so many times. How would you be able to utilize him in a unique way? At least the Tomorrowverse did something different and actually used Brainiac 5 in the Legion of Superheroes, which the last time he was used was both in the Legion of Superheroes cartoon and the JLU episode, which the Tomorrowverse blatantly ripped off.
Mm-hmm.
But that's neither here or there.
Actually brings up a good point. Too many creators at DC can't let go of their biases and nostalgia. Because I've heard that you actually had writers for like the new 52 and artists that when they were told to write Superman a certain way, they're like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, then you don't get to write for DC, a-hole. That's not the way this works. But this way, if any writer came to, if somehow the New Direction verse became a thing at DC, and someone came up to us and said, I don't want to write these characters this way, we would laugh you out of the office and say that then go write in the failing universe. Is that correct, JJheat?
Understandable. You're there, you sign a contract, you're there to provide a service, you write in the script. And if you don't want to do it, hey, I hate you don't want to do it, but either you take this gig because you're not going to get reassigned. Because we invest these contracts months, if not years in advance.
And you know what? Even if you don't, there's like tons of other writers and artists who would love work, who will do it. So you're ultimately replaceable, bro.
I mean, you've done good for the industry. We won't take that away from you, but either you take the gig or take your chances elsewhere. I mean, that's just business.
That's the way this works. And Dave says a lot of egotistical artists believe it's the artist's job to tell the audience what they need. Yeah, exactly. That's the same attitude that's running Disney's Star Wars right about now. It's and really
you make
dumb.
a great point, Cameron. Either you agree to write the character or you're out of a job.
Yeah, exactly. I remember there was major pushback and grumbling online and among creators during the New 52. How much of that was actually valid and how much of that was just people
coping
because they didn't like what was being done? Yeah, there was a lot of it. That's why if you look at that's why when Britt and I did the recommended reading for Super Wonder, we said volumes 1 and 2 of Superman Wonder Woman, ignore 3 through 5. Ignore, because it is all anti-Super Wonder propaganda done by one of the most petty writers ever.
You are never going to let that go, are you?
No, I'm sorry, because you got on to write this and you screw it up. And then also you contradict stuff, like when he had Clark find out that Diana's the god of war, and then he throws a hissy fit about that. But in the last issue of the Soul book, he's fine with it because he trusts her. That's what a relationship is, dude. It's freaking ridiculous. Yeah, I honestly just read volume 1 and Doom and stop. Yeah, because volume 2 is pretty much doomed. That's what you have to do. And when New 52 was going on, I remember half my friends said they didn't really like how Joker was becoming more homicidal. Okay, Joker is one of the ones where I'll accept some criticism because the whole chopping off his face thing was a little much, right, JJheat?
Way too much. Now, granted, in terms of this Joker being more maniacal and menacing and gruesome, Joker was in that trajectory as far back as Killing Joke, if you're really going to play that argument.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just that the chopping off his face.
Yeah, Death of the Family was just over the top edginess. Like, okay, I see what you're trying to do, but this is a little over the top. Like, come on, Snyder, dial it back.
Well, yeah, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, what the hell is this?
I feel like Snyder wanted to do a Joker's daughter callback, but editorial wouldn't let him.
Yeah, but chopping off the face. Didn't she eat his face too?
Oh, God, now I remember. Why?
I just remembered that. I'm like, wait a second, it got worse somehow. What the heck was going on in that Batman series?
The New 52 Batman run was decent for what it was. Even if Batman Incorporated carried over, even with that, the Scott Snyder stuff was decent, but it did get a little grotesque and edgy at points. And the moment he crossed that line, the book derailed. And it just, even going into Rebirth, it never fully recovered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did eat his face. And I'm like, what the hell is this? You can also skip Superman. Yeah, skip that. Skip anything that says DCYOU and you're good to go. One of the worst things that happened to comics was social media. Amen to that, brother. Speaking of Joker's daughter, she did return in the New 52 series.
Briefly. I think she was in the first volume of Under the Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Mm-hmm. Which is not good. Yeah, exactly.
But back to the main point. Say what you will about all the infighting and the commercial stuff at Warner Brothers Discovery. They've been in this downtread at least since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And Cameron Bailey, to answer your question, DCYOU was just to keep things afloat while they were shifting offices to California. Wait, were they moving from California or were they moving to California?
That was Convergence. Convergence was because they were moving to California from New York and they needed something that they could release.
Okay, but didn't DCYOU carry over like right after that for a couple of months?
It was pretty much right after that. And the problem with that is that the idea of DCU was story over continuity. That's where you got like Jim Gordon Batman in the Batman book, but then in Justice League, it's Bruce.
If you wanted an anthology line or an anthology series, just make that, or at the very least, bring Elseworlds back. That's what really DCYOU should have been marketed as.
That's what you had to do. Dave says Snyder started as a horror comic writer in things like American Vampire, so he wanted to do a more horror-focused Batman series. I liked it. There's room for I'm fine with that. Don't get me wrong, Dave. No, I never said it was bad. I was saying some things may have gone a little extreme, but overall, I really like the Scott Snyder Batman. I don't want it to come apart like I didn't like it at all.
Oh, no. If I had to say there was definitively one, if I had to mention, Cardinal Sin, I know, one Batman run that is egregiously bad, at least in modern years, is Chip Zdarsky. I'm sorry. I just can't. I mean, Tom King's, don't get me wrong, Tom King was bombarded by editorial mandate, but at least the man was consistent up to a point.
Yeah. Tavia asks question. Speaking of DC Rebirth, I'm wondering if you guys made DC Rebirth animated movies of those stories. Well, they did. It's called the second half of the Decay move. That was pretty much Rebirth. That's pretty much what it is. Here's how we know WB is on a downhill. They keep trying to set up a Black Adam. Black Adam is a big bad, which I'm sorry, it was stupid as hell in marketing. Yeah. Where like they tried to make me think that Black Adam is the most powerful being in the universe. I'm like, no, he's the most powerful being on Earth. I'm like, no, he's not.
I mean, top 10 maybe.
Top 10, definitely, totally. And Snyder's Absolute is back to Batman's horror. Yeah, and you know what? That works for him. And you know what? Batman's one of those characters where again you could do like
just about anything.
Horror. You could do horror with Batman actually pretty well. Have you seen his villains?
2 words: Arkham Asylum. If you've read that comic,
that is Grant Morrisoning up to full level Grant Morrison. Oh my gosh!
Yes, if you can make it through that book beginning to end, you can stomach some bad comics. Like let me tell you,
I could, trust me. No wonder it's hard to break you, JJheat. You're probably like, I've read. Well, to be clear, Arkham Asylum is not a bad comic. It's just crazy as hell. You thought Marvel was crazy? Oh my God. What are the chances of Absolute Superman ending up with Lois? I'm glad you asked this.
That's pretty much the default, but hey, let's humor it.
But so here's the thing. Based upon how different they're going, this makes me think there is a possibility that they could go not with Lois for Superman. Because here's the thing. It's not replacing the main universe yet. It's still like a side universe. So they could put him with anyone, really. Maybe WB should have come up with a plan for the DCEU. They did. It's called whatever Snyder had. And had the universe had a beginning, middle, and end before. Well, yeah, they did. That's literally the Zack Snyder's plan. His plan was to do it for a few years and then move on the next. That's why the last movie in the Snyderverse is actually just Flashpoint, like straight up Flashpoint. So I'm wondering if WB is going to lose the character, that they're not going to lose the characters.
No. They might sell the property of DC off, but the actual characters themselves, no, that's going to be in-house.
Yeah, 100%. What are your opinions on Absolute Flash and Absolute Green Lantern books? Okay, Absolute Flash, I'm not really that interested in. Absolute Green Lantern has my interest.
I'm willing to wait it out and see because it's the first time. I know Barry got a lot of momentum IP-wise through the Arrowverse, but Wally still has some intrinsic ease that makes him stand out. And Wally did carry the mantle for a generation, arguably a generation and a half. So nostalgia aside, this is the first time Wally's really been in the driver's seat since his redemption arc after Heroes in Crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in terms of like Green Lantern, they did say that even though Joe is like the cover Lantern, Hal and the others are gonna show up. So it's not like they're just excluding Hal, Jordan, Kyle, and Guy and John.
Wait, I thought Joe Mullen got shelved after her Far Sector series.
Well, let me put it this way. The Green Lantern on the cover of Absolute Green Lantern is a black woman. So I'm like, which Green Lantern is that? It sure as
Fair
hell
enough.
isn't Teen Lantern because it's too old to be Teen Lantern, and no one gives a crap about Teen Lantern.
We tried the whole Green Lantern sidekick thing in the 90s. It was not going to work out. Kyle Rayner was the closest to that, because even if we are factoring willpower and a power ring, why would you bequeath that to a child?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Joe, according to British Joe, which that's fine if you want to like use it for something different. That's fine.
Oh, by all means.
Yeah, but my point is, I'm happy they're not like excluding the others for the other ones. So then we have, let's see, probably because probably Jessica, because WB has been putting so much investment in her, which I'm fine with because I freaking love Jessica Cruz. She's awesome.
Out of all the new Green Lanterns that debuted late New 52 onward, it's Jessica, Simon Bass, and JoJo Mullen. Teen Lantern, we can't really count because she only got one series and she was more of an ensemble character in it. And John Ridley's
And here's the thing. Here's why. And Robert said something very interesting on UTC today. Part of the reason why Jessica took off and Simon did not is because Simon was created as a plot device. Jessica was created as an actual character.
That is true.
That's why. And when you think about the character of Jessica Cruz, here's why I love her. Like, freaking amazing. You have a Green Lantern that's agoraphobic. She had one of the few good Rebirth series where it's basically the one line that I always think of is where she says, I'm a Green Lantern. I'm supposed to be fearless, but I'm too scared to leave my house half the time. How can I be a good Green Lantern? That's called pathos. That's how you write a female character and not seem contrived, Lois Lane writers. Yes, I had to turn this into a Lois Lane hit.
Get it out of your system, man. My Adventures of Superman got a season 3. Get it out of your system.
No. Green Lantern.
I'm sorry you had to find out like this, man. I'm sorry you had to find out.
Well, that's the other thing. Green Lanterns are militarized police. They don't need sidekicks. They have partners. That's like a cop driving around with a kid in the patrol car. Can you imagine?
Ride-alongs do exist, so that's not that far off.
Yeah, exactly. That would be hilarious. Why do we need Teen Lantern? Because her character's such a... Her bad... It's stupid because she apparently hacked a Green Lantern.
So let me make sure I got this right, because I barely remember Bendis's Wonder Comics.
I was about to say, I think this sounds like something that would be created by someone that had a really tough time at DC. Yeah, as far as I know, the idea is that she hacked the central power battery.
From what I remember this is strictly from the Young Justice title in 2019. So if anything happened in John Ridley's line, I kind of burnt out during that time. So I just don't know. Mm-hmm. But if I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. So apparently this young girl stumbles upon a dying Green Lantern who has this weaponized prototype gauntlet, and she somehow gets it to work.
Mm-hmm. It's Krona's gauntlet.
Okay, so do you actually need a power battery to use it, or does she just...
I have no idea.
Did Bendis even explain that?
I don't know. I never read the book because it would just seem so, and say it with me now, stupid. That's what it was. Here's the problem with Bendis. When he makes characters, he does... Let me this way. I think he thinks it through. It's just he doesn't necessarily think the lore through. That's the problem with writers like Bendis. If they don't like lore, they throw it out or ignore it. He was doing this in Marvel
multiple times. Riri Williams is a perfect example. And yes, we all know he
really thought long and hard about that name, didn't he?
Jared, are you trying to get us demonetized?
Oh gosh, I had to. Which apparently the gauntlet was Krona. Yeah, the Krona, the renegade guardian. I knew that. I read it. And they basically created a smart black girl trope for Teen Lantern. I know. So I was like, what the heck is this? But this is Teen Lantern. Well, that explains a lot. Yeah, exactly. That first name is all you gotta know. Wait, didn't John Stewart took the Teen Lantern gauntlet away? I never know.
From what I've been told, again, I never read the Green Lantern John Ridley book because it was egregiously bad. So I could never bring myself to read it. But from what I've been told, at some point, John did take the gauntlet from her at some point. I can't tell you what issue. I can't tell you what page number. I just know that happened at that point. The central power battery was destroyed for a time to set up Future State, and Teen Lantern was subsequently shelved. Like, if there might have been a cameo or two, but I have not seen her in anything I've read. So
I don't think she has. I think that DC at least detected that she's not good enough to have her own series, so they're putting her in like ensemble books, which that's fine. They're never gonna completely get rid of the character, even though I wish they would. If I were in charge of DC, the first thing I would do is say, okay, I'm doing a culling of characters right now, so we're deleting the following characters: Naomi, Teen Lantern, Joe Mullins, anyone that can't manage their own book, and we're putting the resources that would go into these characters into making Wonder Woman sell. It's really simple.
I will say this though. Now, this is all I'm going to say on the Naomi.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi was a tribute character for McDuffie's passing, but if you really wanted a decent tribute, find a way to cut a deal with the estate and reintegrate Milestone into DC proper.
Yeah.
That would have been a better tribute and respect to the man than just naming an OC after him.
Well, here's the thing. Not only did he create an OC, he put her on the Justice League.
Because Young Justice from Wonder Comics imploded and she was put in an ensemble book. I mean, where are you going to go from if not Young Justice?
Don't use the character. If there's one character that should not have been on the Justice League, it's Naomi. I'm sorry. That's it. By the way, Atchison asked a great point. What are your opinions the worst new 52 series? Teen Titans.
Titans. Hands down.
Teen Titans. I don't even have to read the rest of the question. What is the worst Rebirth series?
Ooh.
I want to say Superman.
Tom King's Batman. Bendis is close. And yes, I'm going to get the clip in a minute.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count. Bendis was after they got rid of Rebirth.
The tagline, but come on, you know those series are contracted. Bendis was like at the tail end of the Rebirth line.
No, he was 2009. He was 2009. I mean, that's 2019.
Somebody clip this.
Stop it. Wonder Woman by Rucka.
I'll give you that.
Because not only
I'll give you that.
So in the first arc, they do the whole stupid new 52 sucks. My relationship with Superman was easy. Since when? And then so they try to redo the origin. Then Rucka's like, oh yeah, Wonder Woman's bi because she comes from an island of only women. Yeah, but those women are her freaking aunts, you idiot.
And they practically raised her. Or at least
and they imply that Wonder Woman sleeps around on the island. So I'm like, hey, Rucka, you're making Wonder Woman look bad right about now.
Like, I understand the whole, how could a woman who was raised in a matriarchal society even, at least to it, I get the connotation Rucka is going
actually, here's the thing, and I was watching a video. They had a great explanation for this. You ready? If this is supposed to be Paradise Island, why does she leave the island? It's obviously not paradise if she leaves the island. And second off, you can't assume that because that's assuming that there's no asexual people on the island. You can't tell me they're all lesbians.
That's probably the closest we'll get to demonetization tonight. But
I didn't say anything bad. There was this line that Nick told me in Why the Last Man. So the idea of Why the Last Man is that every man except for one gets like eliminated, but by like a virus. There's only one man left, and he meets this society of women, and few of them have gotten together, but others are still single. And he goes, "Wait, but it's all just you." He goes, "Just because we're all women does not mean we." They say something very like vulgar, so I'm just gonna say, it doesn't mean we all lean that way. So just because it's only women, that is extremely lazy thinking. That's like in the Red Sun movie where Wonder Woman goes, "I come from an island of only women. You do the math," and I'm like, what the heck?
I get that it's tacked on. And now I will say this. From what I remember in Red Sun, I don't really think there was a Super Wonder moment in Red Sun.
In the comic, they imply that Wonder Woman's in love with him the entire time.
Okay.
They never get together, but it's more Wonder Woman loves him from afar, and Superman is too focused on his mission to like see it,
reciprocate.
then then obviously that all goes apart when she sees what a dictator he is. So it's like that's not going to go. So they were never together, but Wonder Woman was in love with him in that book.
Okay, because I think that in the movie adaptation they just omitted it altogether. I mean, you didn't really save much.
Tavia brings up your favorite Teen Titans run.
I'm sorry, is that supposed to impact me? Because okay. Editorial mandate, I can forgive. The whole Cassandra Cain saga with the League of Assassins and Deathstroke. Oh God, that book, that story arc. Okay, but at least Beechin got a chance to redeem himself, so I will give Beechin that much. But the only thing I really have to complain about the Adam Glass run is not even the editorial mandate to make Damian the Magneto to John Kent's Professor X. That was never really going to work in the grand scheme of things. Because there's outside the League of Assassins, there's nothing to generally garner Damian as a threat because he's a child in most iterations. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what can he really do in the grand scheme of things? But even amongst all that, the one thing, okay, you know what? Hopefully I don't get you demonetized for this, Jared, but this
please keep it PG. I beg of you. I beg of you.
All I'm going to say is that why are you trying to set up, no matter how brief, a pairing between a coming-of-age adolescent with a genie who's over 4,000 years old?
Well, JJheat, it's anime rules.
Don't try to tie anime logic.
I'm just trying to get him because he riled up. That's the way it works.
I walked right into that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. I'm like, it's anime rules. But no, you make an excellent point. They always go with this, but I'm like, you realize that still, like, physically she's a kid. It doesn't work. Not to mention, if Damian did run the league, he would change it to do his relationship with his father. Yeah, he would change the league to make it more congenial to his father. He wouldn't like make it bad. But Mom, she's actually a 50,000-year-old trash. Oh God, that's awesome, Dave. I love you, brother. That's
Never
awesome,
change, Dave. Never change.
I love that. I love that. So, what other questions do you guys have for us? By the way, I want to announce that next week, Sam Liu is coming back on the show. And this time, instead of like talking about a specific project, we're going to do a Q&A of like all of his projects that he's worked on and some stuff he is actually involved in right now. So we'll have some fun with that.
And shout out to Sam Liu. He actually gave me permission to actually do the DeCambu retrospective. Though, spoilers for Crisis, because I don't know if everybody's seen it. So now I got to do two retrospectives because of that whole mystery.
I think time has passed. I think we can do that.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do a brief segment now.
Wait. First, I want to answer this question. Speaking of DC and Marvel comics, reminds me, what is your favorite and least events from the decade? Oh.
Ooh.
Okay, decade. So we're talking about
2010s or are we talking 2000s?
I think you said decades.
Ever since I started getting into comics, okay, my top three have always been Under the Red Hood. The majority of
is that an event though?
Red Hood is considered an event comic. Again, it was self-contained in Batman and Batman titles, but it is technically an event book. But if we're playing semantics, Blackest Night. But if we're playing semantics, Blackest Night. So what active? Grant Morrison JLA, I believe it was Act of God. No, or was that Act of God or Tower of Babel?
Tower of Babel was the contingency plan one. Okay. He said any era. So let's just go with any era. Dark Side War is number one for me. Number two is, in terms of events, I'm going to do one from post-crisis, one from New 52 and one from Rebirth, just to show I'm not biased. So Dark Side War for New 52. I would have to go with Sinestro Corps War for post-crisis because of the whole reframing of Coast City. It's super cool. And in terms of Rebirth, screw it. Justice League versus Suicide Squad. Because here's the thing. As much as I enjoy metal, it led to an oversaturation of the Batman Who Laughs, and death metal just broke DC.
Speaking of which, Dave the Impaler asked, "Do you think the 5G would have been or DC would have been a better position?" Okay, I'll answer your question too.
No.
Hold on. At
But
least let's at least address it. Then we can rant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of Dan DiDio still being in charge at DC, yes, because at least in between the fandom and all these crazy hijink gimmicks, Dan DiDio had more business sense and could help keep the higher ups grounded, even if he couldn't find a direct balance between the editorial staff and the creative team. Dan DiDio had decent business sense and could establish a sense of objective balance in the company itself. I will say what you will about the man and legacy characters, but he had enough business sense to keep things afloat. So you can't take that away from the man.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing: at least he knew how to keep people in line and keep a plan going. At least he was a man with a plan. That's what you could appreciate. You may not have liked all the elements of the plan, but at least DC had a direction.
Or should we say a new direction?
Or you could say an old direction in their case, because they went with the Rebirth, which is a very old direction. But
in all seriousness, as for 5G, no, that would have tanked the entire line.
But by the way, JJheat, I'm going to address this right now. I had a suggestion for a new direction
sure,
topic. Future's End.
It's a challenge.
I'm saying I think we should do it. Really challenge ourselves now to make it a good story.
Oh God!
Which would involve cutting half of the books, but I think that could be really fun. But 5G would have completely tanked the company. I got news with what they wanted to do. Even Comic Historian admitted when he talked about it, he was like, "Yeah, that's not going to work."
Yeah, if it as an Elseworld, it could be. You could pull it off as an Elseworld. But in continuity, it would have tanked the entire line. I'm telling you, this wouldn't have even lasted.
Oh, yeah. If that had been the ultimate, that would have been a great DC Ultimate. Like, that could have been pretty dope. But again, replacing it, I'm like, and making Clark, Bruce, and Diana the Elseworlds characters, that's not going to work. Because DC had to learn for some reason, so what they were trying to, what 5G is, and JJheat, you can tell me if this is a fair assumption. Sure. All new, all different DC.
Yep.
The problem with that, here's the stupid part about that. You ready, JJheat? All new, all different freaking tanked.
God awful.
So you're going to copy even Marvel's bad ideas?
And I'm like, okay, Marvel, now hear me out. Let me cook. Marvel now did give you some setup. I will give you that. But just because you established and set it up does not mean from a commercial standpoint it was executed well, it was conveyed properly, or everyone was just going to accept it. I mean, the only real success, you had 3 relative successes even after All New, All Different. And that was X-23 co-sharing the Wolverine moniker with Logan, because Logan's practically over 200 years old at this point. Miles Morales being brought into the main 616, and Gore the God Butcher. Other than those 3, they've either stagnated or completely abandoned those concepts.
That Gore story was freaking fantastic, bro. I read that, and I'm like, this is what Thor Love and Thunder should have been. I'm like, geez, how do you screw this up? Easy, you put Taika Waititi on the movie. That's your first issue right there. But basically, all new, all different, but for DC. Yeah, essentially, here's the thing. It failed for DC, too. Every time they've tried to apply, because here's the thing. Here's why it wouldn't work for DC. Because, and I've said this every single time, with DC specifically, when you think of Superman, what's the first name that pops into your mind?
Clark Kent.
How about Batman?
Bruce Wayne.
How about Aquaman?
Arthur Curry.
Oh, so you're saying not John Kent, not Jace Fox, not Jackson Hyde. The Aquaman one was even more stupider because I had them share the mantle and go by the Aquamen.
At least in the context of the Young Justice series, Arthur officially retired.
He retired. That's why that worked. And I was like, okay, fine. But Aquaman is still doing stuff in the books. So no Captain
Falcon. Okay. You know what? Let's make a comparison. Captain Falcon.
Punch.
And Winter Soldier from Ed Brubaker's run post Civil War.
We still have to do that Ed Brubaker Captain America video, by the way, JJheat.
Oh yes, we do. That
What's
is
up,
a
Sean
solid
Because
run.
that is arguably what made Captain America the A-lister he is combined with those movies. That when you think of all the good Captain America stories from like the modern era, it's
It's Ed
straight up
Brubaker.
just from that.
It's Ed Brubaker. It's literally
Winter
his run.
Soldier. It's him. Even the Winter Soldier series he did, fantastic. Like wow. Wait. So let's see. The legacy idea could have worked if they actually let the characters age and not keep them in limbo. That is true as well. But the problem is that they're never going to do that because, again, to that point, they have to keep Clark, Bruce, and Diana. That's why they do. That's why the new. That's the other thing that the new 52 did is they de-aged a lot of the characters to like I'd say our age at least, like 28, 29, or like I think Wonder Woman was 23. They actually explicitly said that. So at least they made it so like the younger generation could like identify with these characters. So that's partly why it works so well. I guess it's a question of whether a focused bad direction or bad experiment is better than being directions and spinning. Honestly, Dave brings up an excellent point. I would rather go with the bad direction.
I would, yeah. Say what you will, but the only
at least
way
he had a plan.
You know what? I'm just gonna say it. Even the best 5G could have hoped for, at least in an in continuity context, is DC Civil War. That is literally your best case scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Honestly, a DC Civil War and not Injustice would have been pretty dope.
Because contrary to popular belief, if you actually want a DC Civil War, Kingdom Come.
It's literally that. By the way, can I say one thing? So I keep checking out Absolute Power, and you know what's the one thing that really I'm like, you've done this many times? Oliver Queen siding against the Justice League. Why are we repeating this plot point?
Okay, Oliver trying to, be Waller's dog, try to see what's going on, and trying to procure the hourglass. Yeah, that's understand. I mean, Oliver. It's just
again him siding against the League again, and his own freaking wife. I'm like, you're doing this again right when we just got him back.
Because Joshua Wilson's going through burnout. He's still contracted for 3 more issues, and we need melodrama to run out the pages, run up page time.
Oh, by the way, so I had a bit of a surprise. So obviously, I picked up my books, and you know what was actually pretty good?
What?
Tom King's Wonder Woman issue 11. I skipped the backup that was Trinity at essentially a Taylor Swift concert, but it was an action-packed issue. I realized what the problem is. I just don't like the Sovereign story, which apparently that's done. So I'm more congenial to it. Plus, here's the thing, JJheat, it's Tony Daniel drawing Wonder Woman.
That's the saving grace of the book.
Here's the problem with Tom King. You can hate his stuff, but he keeps getting the best artists. That's why he was so sad. That's partly why I resubbed to the book as soon as I saw, because obviously a fan of Superman and Wonder Woman by Charles Sewell and Tony Daniel. I was like, I'm like, do I stick to my principles, even though my principle in this case was faulty? I'll give it that. But even with that, I was like, I want to read that. But anyway, the issue is actually pretty action packed, and it's actually pretty fun. And I put this in my review for the members. I'm like, a fun Tom King Wonder Woman issue.
I will say now, granted, I haven't read the issue yet, so I'm not going to try to spoil anything. So without going into too many spoilers, does Emily ever get readdressed or appear in the comic?
So far, no. Nope. But Scott Snyder confirmed King. But Britt, actually, from what I heard, Snyder said that these storylines are starting as new jumping on points with new story arcs. So that kind of tells me that like they're keeping the creative teams, but they're having to move on.
Yeah, you might get an epilogue issue or 2, but Sovereign is definitely going to be wrapped up in the next 3 to 4 issues.
Which I told you that's what they were going to do, and see if maybe it's just Tom King's writing is. It's the story that's causing people like mess up. Can we get a Wonder Woman story, by the way, where she fights gods and not gender stuff? I'm sick of that being the stereotypical conflict that she always has to do. I understand that that's part of it, but can you please just give her something else also, because Wonder Woman fights freaking gods. Unlikable.
Unlike most of the heroes aren't going to bow to the government. Okay, you know what? Quick tangent on Marvel for a second. With Marvel, at least in that story, the most the government was asking for, hey, we're the institution, we represent the people. You reveal your identities to us and act as official U.S. agents. That's all you need to do in compliance.
And here's the problem. That works. But here's the problem that led to Civil War, and here's why I sided with Cap on that. The minute you start saying, if you don't sign up, we're going to lock you up, that's when I start to go, nah, I'm not okay with that. And you're going to have you're going to have the Avengers hunt down their friends. Yeah, that's pretty messed up. If you had just said, you just have to work for S.H.I.E.L.D., okay, fine. But the minute you say I have to lock up my friends, like I'd lock up Nick and Taladia, obviously, but my point is like I'm not doing that. That is completely stupid. Right, a hot take. Rebirth should have been a 2-year-long event, giving the pre-Flashpoint timeline actual conclusion instead of merging it. That could have worked. Just end it like that. But
high risk, high reward. But it could have been done. You could pull it off with a good creative team. You could have pulled it off.
And Lord, with a good non-petty creative team. And I know for DC that's a lot to ask, but whatever. But really, ultimately, it's really stupid. So Convergence established the post-crisis timelines could still exist. They literally could have brought back the post-crisis timelines, a separate universe of books from the New 52. And JJheat, weren't they also doing another universe alongside Earth Prime and the New 52?
Earth 2 saga, but I'm pretty sure. Okay, after Convergence. Oh, yeah, it's Earth
No, but
2.
my point is they had done that before. It's not like it's not a precedent. So just do that. That's all you have to do. But no. Question. Speaking of Marvel, this will be the last question, then we'll wrap it up. Speaking of Marvel, that reminds me, I'm wondering if you were in charge of Spider-Man within post-Civil War, how would you have done One More Day but better? Not done it.
No,
it's really that simple. That was a stupid idea.
I get the notion of it. Now, let me quote. I do get the notion. Okay, this character's been progressing for like 20, 30 years. We're tying into a new generation of readers. And you want to make Peter Parker relatable, and it effectively put the character in limbo. That bought you a few years, but ultimately it won't do you any good in the long term because Peter's going to be stagnant because he can't take that next step. He can't break out of that loop. Say what you will about the Paul stuff. That's egregious. But even with that, the moment you incorporate Miles Morales into 616 and you actually want to prop him up or actually give him some development, you can't because Peter's character loop or his bad luck is always going to take precedent. So the only way you can make Miles progress and stand out, you have to progress Peter in tandem. And you can't really do that if Peter's still stuck in a character loop.
Yeah, exactly. But again, I still think it was stupid to bring Miles into the 616 and have 2 Spider-Man because my policy on sharing mantles at this point, and I'm just like, it's a stupid idea ultimately. And really, the problem is they had a perfect opportunity. They could have Peter with Mary Jane and just do that, have him married, and then if they want the younger, more relatable Spider-Man, you literally have Miles. So going off of that, you literally have the capacity to make your fan base happy, to make all the people that were pissed off at you happy. And guess what? You repeatedly don't do that. In fact, you like rant about them. So that's really where Marvel is like really, really stupid. Peter should get Mary Jane back and Paul can join this sad Nova Corps or whatever. Yeah, remember how there's like a sad Lantern Corps now? JJheat, the Lantern Corps of sadness now. They're all a bunch of sad sacks. At least sadness is an actual emotion as opposed to death and life. And I'm like, okay, that's or gold. And I'm like, what the
hell? Are you even trying?
Yeah, I know. My whole thing is stop adding in Lantern Corps. Like Jeremy Adams, I love your Lantern run. I love it. It's awesome. Can we please stop adding Lantern cores now? It's getting a little ridiculous.
And is this guy even going to remotely be a villain going forward?
No,
because this guy was literally.
I guarantee you, they're not. We're never going to see him again.
This guy was literally a plot device because Carol was okay. Now, to be fair, Hal is. If we're going to factor this in universe, Hal is guilty of this too. Hal is basically DC's Captain Kirk. He's guilty of this too in context of the relationship to a degree.
He's Captain Kirk. Am
I wrong?
So true. That's so true.
But even so, as much as Hal is the textbook definition of a horn dog, and hopefully I don't get you demonetized for saying that, Jared.
It's all good. Keep going.
But even as much of a horn dog Hal is, he at least makes an attempt to find a balance between his post on Oa, returning to Earth, and finding some way to commit to a relationship with Carol, either by proxy or his family.
It's everybody's a good point. Remember the ultraviolet core?
Yep.
Which that was stupid.
Yep.
Again, I'm like, stop adding in Lantern cores.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Absolute Power is setting up Carol to become a Star Sapphire again. And I'm like,
well, yeah, and she's on the Justice League now in the Mark Waid Justice League book now.
And I'm like, the whole point of Carol being, now I know a total nerd moment by all means, but the whole purpose of Carol being a Star Sapphire is literally the wrath of a woman scorned. That's kind of the whole point.
Not necessarily. It's kind of evolved past that.
At least the original intention when Carol got the ring.
Yeah, the original intention was that. So if you could choose, who would you have running DC? Dan DiDio. I'd say, what do we have to pay? Because as much as I didn't like some of your creative decisions, it led to the new 52, and that was a good choice there.
And you kept editorial in check.
Yeah. So say what you want about Dan DiDio.
Necessary evil.
Yeah. Ultimately, I'd rather have the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Necessary evil. And
they Cameron, should have kept it up. The default Lantern cores. Yeah, exactly. Because that was elegant and simple.
And Cameron, you had an earlier comment earlier. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Unlike Marvel and DC heroes don't bow to government. Which one was that?
11:12 p.m. Cameron Bailey.
11:12. Okay, I'll highlight that one real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. Oh, when is the next New Direction verse?
Okay, now there are going to be some pre-recorded ones, trying to wrap up Volume 1. But the first one to officially kick off Volume 2, Kryptonian Empire. And it's a Superman and Zod team-up. That's all I could say.
Ooh.
That's all I could say.
I'm very interested in that. And I'm looking forward to checking that out. So,
Jared, you're going to collab with me on that one. I mean,
hell yeah. Of course I am. It's New Direction verse and it's Kryptonians. I'm in. So, in terms of, and I think it's safe to say, are we gonna at some point do Future's End?
We'll discuss it, Jared. We'll discuss it.
All right. So JJheat, let the kind people at home know where they can find you and what have you got coming on your channel.
Well, as for me, you can find me at JJheat Blaze on YouTube or JJheat75 on Twitter because I refuse to call it X. I'm sorry, I just can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, I just call it Twitter.
And I'm on my road to 300 subscribers. We have already reached over 260. A milestone video is in the works. More likely is going to be Gotham Knights Review Part 2. Also, stay tuned for my Damian Wayne and DCAMU retrospectives. Tomorrowverse and all that interconnected stuff with Crisis is going to be part of a separate video, because I'm going through the script right now, and there's no way I can get this in one. If I tried to do this all in one video, the script would literally be 7 pages.
X is not going to give it to you. Yeah, of course. Thanks, Dave. So tomorrow, so in terms of me, tomorrow I'm doing a live, tomorrow or Sunday, I'm doing a live watch through of Rebel Moon Part 2 Director's Cut. And in terms of Super Wonder, a Legacy, Britt and I are going to talk about Wonder Woman 3. If we did it, how would we do it? What storylines would we want to do? And why DC should prioritize Wonder Woman on the movie department. And then we will see what else is going on. And obviously, next week's CLD will be with Sam Liu. We'll be doing a Q&A on his whole career instead of one particular project. So, yeah, we'll be having fun with that. So, let's go ahead and wrap up by saying Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs to General Zod. Zois and Max about for life. I will see you later. Bye-bye.